This is the Kickin Lawyer, Jere Mason, and today we're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, and that would be dinero, the money, how lawyers are paid. And this is something that I think also that lawyers are not taught in law school. Very rarely was the topic of money discussed other than, be scared of trust accounts and whatnot, and be careful with client funds, you get disbarred, and that's all very important and accurate. But I personally went to law school to learn how to make more money was at least one of the reasons that I went to law school, because again, I went later in life, and I had come from a job where, as a police officer, where I was making like $25, $30 an hour, and I'd always heard these legendary figures, even from attorneys I'd hired, where they're making like $250, $300, $500 an hour, and I was like, that's worth it. I can charge half what they're charging, still be super happy, and put everybody out of business by undercutting the competition, or at least that's what I thought initially. So I thought this would be something interesting to go over. So initially, most people are familiar with retainers. There's a couple of different kind of retainers. I won't get into that you can do with attorneys, but generally what a retainer is you pay an attorney sort of an advance on their services, and then the attorney bills against that at whatever their billable rate is. So let's say you pay them $2,000 for whatever it is you're doing, a divorce or whatnot. If they bill at $250 an hour, well, you break that down, that's like 8 hours of work is really what it is. And so I know it seems odd that attorneys can charge so much money. I mean, you do always hear, attorneys, they make all this money. They're like doctors and lawyers are all up there together. If you look at it online, doctors always make more than lawyers do, at least on average. So that's not exactly accurate. It's probably right that it's doctors and then lawyers, but nevertheless, so different attorneys, depending on their experience level, where they are, what the market can bear, charge a different amount per hour. Normal rates, at least in my area in West Tennessee, usually fall between $250 an hour, upwards of maybe even $500 an hour, depending on where you are, especially if you're closer to Memphis or maybe even Nashville area. And they're older or maybe an expert in their area. But it really just depends. The hourly rate, though, is not what the attorney brings home. So the hourly rate is what the firm bills to cover its overhead. So you understand that, like, say it was 1 hour of work at, again, say $250 or $300 an hour. Or a percentage of that has to go to pay a light bill. A percentage of that has to go to pay an employee, a paralegal, to assist with whatever, drafting or whatnot. Part of that has to go to pay for rent. Part of that has to go to wherever it has to go. So that's sort of how the breakdown is. It's not like the attorney brings home $250 from that $250 hourly rate, and they're usually billed depending. Each staff member is also billed at a different amount, so the total office may bill $250 or $300 an hour, but it's not that the attorney is making $250 or $500 an hour or whatever. So a retainer, you'd pay initially that, and then they bill you if they work more than those hours. So you get an invoice from the lawyer saying that, hey, you owe me, I don't know, $500 or whatever extra over the retainer amount that you made. There's also, depending on the type of case, if it's small, sometimes attorneys will do flat rates. And normally this is more in like criminal type matters because it's sort of set on what the attorney may do in the case. You see this a lot with like DUIs and domestics and stuff. So if it's in like a court of non-record, like a Tennessee General Sessions Court, they may have a set rate, $1,000, $1,500. Hey, I'll appear however many times it takes. I'm going to handle this. Or sometimes they even have a flat rate that may be higher. Like some DUI lawyers will charge like $5,000 or $10,000, and that's a flat rate, and that's just to handle it from sessions all the way maybe even through circuit court, which in Tennessee is a trial court. So depending on the number of hearings they go to, that just covers it. Those also, though, can be set up on the retainers to where they pay a certain amount and then they bill against that depending on the specific case. You also have sometimes in civil cases where you do a retainer amount plus a contingency that you would pay. So, say it's a car wreck. You may have to pay the lawyer a little bit up front so that you have skin in the game. You pay a little bit up front, and then on the back end, the attorney still gets a pull of the contingency settlement. So let's say the settlement's $50,000 or $100,000. It's easy math to do. Let's say it's $100,000 and the contingency fee is 35%, which would be $35,000. Well, let's say you pay $1,000 up front. Well, the attorney's $1,000 comes off that because you've already paid that in the retainer. So they would get, like $34,000 back instead of the $35,000. if it was straight up, that's the way it worked, no other fees or whatnot. Sometimes you do straight contingencies, and that's where you pay nothing up front. The attorney covers the work, and sometimes they cover the cost too. A lot of big firms will cover the cost, and that can get expensive. Like expert witnesses you have to pay, research investigations you have to do. There's a lot of due diligence that might come into it, filing fees, staples, whatever. The attorney may cover all that and then get that on the back end too. So even though the fee is, say again, 35%, they get their 35%, but they're also going to get their fees back. So it cuts into potentially what the client might get depending on the case. And then you got some firms, like our firm, will do service for you in trade. So if you've got guns, I like guns, I was a cop. If you've got vehicles that have clean titles, sign that stuff over, we'll take that in trade. And I got kids that need cars, so you come talk to us and we'll trade it out. So some firms will do that. Very few will take a firm or take a case on like a service trade. Some of them will, like say you need a new roof on your business. All that has to be recorded properly so you don't get in trouble with the big dogs at the IRS, but that's another option. Attorneys are also appointed on cases. In the beginning, I didn't want to do criminal defense because of my background, and I kept getting appointed to criminal cases by the judge. He was like, hey, you're in the courtroom, you're an officer of the court, Mr. Mason, you're going to represent this client, this indigent client. That means they didn't have the money to hire a lawyer. Well, I get paid still to represent them by the state. Now, it's only like $40 an hour. I think it's 40 in court, 30 out of court or something like that. It compared to the $250 an hour, or $300 an hour that we might get through our firm. So you can see we actually lose money a lot of times on those cases. But that's another way that attorneys are sometimes compensated, is by getting appointed and then getting paid back through the AOC or the Indigent Defendant Fund through the state. And sometimes you get those on not just criminal defendants, but like DN cases, dependency and neglect cases, where they have a constitutional right to a lawyer. So there's different ways that happens. I think you can also get them through GALs if you're the guardian ad litem on cases. I don't really do that a lot, but I think that's possible too. If you're an estate attorney, sometimes they take that by managing the estate. If they're putting it through probate or whatever, they get a pull from the estate. I'm not real sure how that works, but I know that some lawyers get paid that way. And then, traditionally, so that's kind of how firms are paid. If you work for a firm, it's straight salary. So it's like, hey, we're going to pay you $3,000 a month, $4,000, whatever. It's a big firm. I'm sure it's way more than that. And then maybe you get a percentage commission-wise of cases you bring in, so you get some money off that. Or it can be just a straight salary. And there are even some places that do what they call it's eat what you kill, and that's where they may cover your overhead, but you're going to basically only get what you bring in. And then sometimes you don't even get all of that. I can't remember the old movie. There was a John Grisham book that had a lawyer in it, and he was working with this real shady guy, and it was basically eat what you kill. So if you bring it up and sign them up, you get a small percentage, and the firm gets the majority of it because they're covering your overhead and whatnot. Because there is big overhead with law firms. I mean, you have malpractice insurance that's high. You have, there's a lot of databases and stuff we use for research that can get expensive. We have a professional privilege tax in Tennessee you have to pay. There's other costs associated with being a professional that you might not necessarily see if you're in another field. So it is somewhat high. So what happens if you don't pay your lawyer? If you don't pay your lawyer, clearly we're going to call you. We have to put food on the table too. And if you don't pay us for our service, clearly that causes a problem, And I tell people this too. A lot of people call and they want free consultations, which we do those here. So you can call the number below if you got a question. I've told you can email me. I usually am pretty open about that. But here's what you got to realize. I went to school a long time and have a lot of money invested in the knowledge that you would like to have that I'm giving for free here on YouTube. And so if you come in and just want it for free and you're not wanting to compensate me for that, it's really no different than if you go in like Walmart and you see a t-shirt and you just take it. You wouldn't do that. That's theft, right? You're stealing their product. Well, my product is my advice or my knowledge that I'm giving to you. So it's kind of the same thing from a lawyer perspective if you come and get service from us, but then don't compensate us. So just, it's just sort of a twist on how to look at it. And I know people are like, lawyers are terrible. You only need us really when bad stuff happens. But it's a necessary evil, I mean, if you were in a real bad spot, you want somebody that can advocate for you fervently, and that's what a good lawyer will do. And then obviously if you don't pay, it can be turned over to collections. They can put liens against you. There's all kinds of different stuff that could happen, just like any other debt you would owe. But probably the worst thing is, let's say you need a lawyer in the future. Well, that could be a big negative. If this lawyer has done well for you, done good service, and then you haven't compensated them properly, they might be hesitant to represent you later. And then they might even call, and the new lawyer you go to may call the other lawyer because you're a pending client. They might talk about it and just be honest with them about it. So, word can get out that you're not paying the attorney. And they always say, there's one person you definitely want to keep on the good side, and that's your lawyer, if you need your lawyer handy. So that's just a basic overview of how attorneys are paid, how firms are paid, how it's set up. You can Google the average in your state. I'm not sure where you're watching from, but the average income that lawyers make. And lawyers can make okay money. You can make pretty good money. There's a lot more involved if you're in private practice, sort of like sales, that you won't necessarily deal with if you're at maybe a big firm or in a corporate position of counsel or something like that, or in a government job if you're a public defender or a prosecutor or something like that. So there's a lot of options out there. It does open a lot of doors. I hope this has been informative to you. As always, I ask that you subscribe to the videos, you comment, like them, share them, and then give me some input if there's something else that you would like to see. And I look forward to hearing from you guys, hearing your comments. If you need something, as always, you can call the number below. I'll be glad to speak with you here at the Huff and Butler Mason Law Firm. And until next time.